The space above planet Kathvar looked like hell itself had opened its gates. Red flames shot across the black sky as alien ships burned and fell toward the surface. Admiral Zixthala pressed her crystal hands against the cold metal of her ship's bridge window and watched another colony transport explode into a million pieces. Her home world was dying, and she could do nothing to stop it. The creatures they called the Vorthak had come 3 days ago. Their ships looked like giant insects made of black metal and pulsing flesh. They moved through space like a swarm of angry wasps, attacking everything they found. When the shooting started, Zixthala had 300 warships under her command. Now she had only 13 ships left, and most of those were badly damaged. "Admiral," called out her communications officer, a young female named Velnara. Her voice shook as she spoke. "The last evacuation ship just went down. There are no more civilian vessels in the system." Zixthala felt something cold settle in her chest. 3 million people had lived on Kathvar just 1 week ago. Men, women, and children who had built their lives on this peaceful world at the edge of known space. Now they were all gone, consumed by the hungry darkness that was the Vorthak swarm. "How many systems have they taken now?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would make her feel worse. 17 confirmed, Admiral. Maybe more. The outer communication relays went dark 2 days ago. 17 systems. Billions of lives. The Vorthak did not just kill their enemies. They ate them. Their ships would land on populated worlds and release millions of small creatures that looked like metal spiders. These creatures would capture every living thing they could find and drag them back to huge processing centers. There the victims would be broken down into basic materials and used to build more Vorthak soldiers and ships. It was not just war. It was farming, and every intelligent species in the galaxy was the crop. Zixthala turned away from the window and walked to her command chair. The bridge around her was dark except for the red emergency lights. Half of her crew was dead or wounded, and the other half looked like they had given up hope. She could not blame them. For 3 years, the Vorthak had been spreading through the outer rim systems like a disease, and no one had been able to stop them. "Velnara, open a channel to all Coalition member worlds. Maximum broadcast strength." The young officer's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Channel open, Admiral." Zixthala took a deep breath and began to speak. Her words would travel faster than light across hundreds of star systems, reaching every major civilization in the galaxy. It might be the last message she ever sent. "This is Admiral Zixthala of the Galactic, Defense Coalition 7th Fleet. The Kathvar system has fallen to the Vorthak swarm. I am requesting immediate military assistance from any Coalition member world capable of deploying rapid response forces. We are facing complete extinction. The enemy has adaptive shielding that makes our energy weapons useless after the first few shots. Their ships can repair themselves during battle. They coordinate their attacks through some kind of hive mind that makes them impossible to surprise or outmaneuver." She paused, watching the tactical display that showed more red enemy markers appearing at the edge of the system. The Vorthak were bringing in fresh ships to finish what they had started. "We need help. We need it now. If the swarm is not stopped here, they will continue to spread until every world in the galaxy is nothing but empty space and dead rock. This is not just about one system or one species. This is about survival itself." The message went out into the void, carried by quantum transmitters to every corner of civilized space. Then Zixthala and her crew waited for the galaxy to respond. The first answer came from the Altarian Star Kingdom. Their ambassador appeared on the communication screen, his blue skin pale with what might have been fear or embarrassment. "Admiral Zixthala, the Altarian fleet is currently bound by neutrality agreements with several border systems. We cannot deploy military forces outside our territorial space without Senate approval, and the Senate is not currently in session." The second response came from the Centaurian Republic. High Counselor Morthak's image flickered on the screen, his 4 eyes avoiding direct contact with the camera. "The Republic deeply sympathizes with your situation, Admiral. However, our fleet assets are currently engaged in a border dispute with the Vegan Confederation. We cannot spare ships at this time." The third message was from the Vegan Confederation itself. Admiral Kextar looked genuinely sorry as he explained, "We would like to help, but our analysts believe the Vorthak threat has been exaggerated. Deploying our fleet based on unconfirmed reports would be irresponsible. We are prepared to send medical supplies and refugee support once the situation stabilizes." One by one, Every major power in the galaxy found reasons why they could not help. The Andromedan Trade Union cited budget constraints. The Solar Federation claimed their ships were undergoing maintenance. The Crystal World sent thoughts and prayers but no actual assistance. Some governments were honest about their fear. They believed the Vorthak could not be stopped with conventional weapons, so sending their fleets would just mean losing more ships and crews. Others seemed to think that if they ignored the problem long enough, it would somehow go away on its own. A few smaller worlds offered to help, but they had no military forces worth mentioning. The planet Xerion volunteered to send their entire defense fleet, which consisted of 6 patrol boats that were older than most of the crew members flying them. As the hours passed and the responses came in, Zixthala felt hope drain out of her like water through a broken pipe. The galaxy had abandoned them. When faced with a real threat that required sacrifice and courage, every major civilization had chosen to protect their own interests instead of working together. "Admiral," Velnara said quietly, "there is one more option." Zixthala looked up from the tactical display where she had been watching the Vorthak ships form up for their final attack. "What option?" "We have contacted every coalition member world." "Not every spacefaring species, Admiral. There is a small world in the Sol system. The inhabitants call themselves humans, and they call their planet Earth. They achieved faster-than-light travel about 5 years ago, but the Coalition Evaluation Committee decided they were too primitive and aggressive to be offered membership." Zixthala almost laughed, but there was no humor left in her. "The primitives? The ones who still fight wars among themselves with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. What could they possibly do against the swarm that we cannot?" Velnara looked down at her console. "I do not know, Admiral, but they have not responded to any diplomatic contact attempts in the past year. Some of our intelligence reports suggest they have been building up their military forces significantly since first contact." Another explosion lit up the sky outside as a Vorthak ship destroyed one of the remaining defense platforms. In a few more hours, the enemy would be landing on the surface to begin the harvest. Every minute of delay meant more of her people would die. Zixthala made her decision. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. "Send the message, Velnara. All frequencies maximum power." The young officer nodded and began entering the transmission codes. After a moment, she looked up. "Ready, Admiral. Zix." Thala stared out at the burning sky and spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. "This is Admiral Zixthala of the Galactic Defense. Coalition to any receiving station in the Sol system. We require immediate military assistance against an existential threat to all civilized life in the galaxy. The Vorthak swarm has consumed 17 systems and shows no signs of stopping. We are prepared to offer full coalition membership and complete technology exchange in return for any aid you can provide." She paused, then added, "We are out of options. If you can hear this message, please help us. We do not have much time left." The message shot out across the void toward a small blue world where something very different was stirring. Earth had been listening to the galaxy's communications for 5 years, learning about the species that had rejected them. They had heard every diplomatic exchange, every trade negotiation, and every military report. They had also been preparing for the day when the galaxy might need them after all. The message traveled through the darkness of space, carrying with it the desperate hope of a dying civilization. Behind it, Admiral Zixthala watched the Vorthak ships move closer to her world and wondered if anyone out there was listening. She was about to find out that sometimes, when the galaxy sends silence, Earth sends something much more dangerous. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the Pentagon's deepest bunker, staring at the alien message playing on the holographic display for the 15th time in 6 hours. The room around him buzzed with quiet conversation as the most powerful military minds on Earth tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The alien who called herself Admiral Zixthala looked desperate. Her crystal-like skin was cracked with stress lines, and her large eyes held the kind of fear that came from watching everything you cared about burn. The translation software had taken 3 hours to decode her language completely, but the message was clear enough. "Help us or we all die." "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said General Lisa Carter, tapping her fingers on the metal table. "These aliens ignored us for 5 years. They called us too primitive and too violent to join their little space club. Now they want our help because their fancy energy weapons do not work against these bug creatures." Dr. Alan Brooks, the head of the xenobiology team, adjusted his thick glasses and looked uncomfortable. Based on their technical data, these Vorthak creatures are unlike anything in our military planning scenarios. They can adapt their defenses to any energy weapon after being hit a few times. They reproduce by converting organic matter into more soldiers. They coordinate their attacks through a shared consciousness that makes them almost impossible to surprise. Colonel Ryan Murphy leaned back in his chair and grinned. So they are like angry space ants that eat people and learn from their mistakes. Sounds like Tuesday in Detroit. President Helen Torres raised her hand for silence. The room immediately went quiet. She was a small woman, but when she spoke, everyone listened. Admiral Morrison, I need your honest opinion. Can we actually help these people? Morrison walked to the main display and activated the tactical overview. Images of Earth's military assets filled the wall, showing ship designs that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. The discovery of alien technology in the Kuiper Belt had changed everything. Human engineers had reverse-engineered propulsion systems, energy generators, and manufacturing techniques that put Earth decades ahead of where they should have been. Madam President, we have been preparing for hostile alien contact since we built our first faster-than-light ship. Our entire military doctrine assumes we will always be outnumbered, outgunned, and facing enemies with better technology than ours. He pressed a button, and the display showed the current Earth fleet. 600 combat ships of various sizes floated in orbit around Earth and its colonies. They looked different from the sleek alien vessels shown in the Coalition databases. Human ships were angular and covered with weapon systems. They looked like they were built for war, because they were. Every ship in our fleet carries nuclear weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, and what our engineers call adaptive countermeasures, Morrison continued. We also have some special projects that might interest these Vorthak creatures. General Carter smiled in a way that would have made a shark nervous. What the Admiral means is that we have weaponized everything we could get our hands on. Our mining ships can drop asteroids on targets from halfway across a solar system. Our construction vessels deploy combat drones that could take apart a small moon. And our actual warships, well, they were designed by people who assume every fight will be our last fight. Dr. Brooks shifted nervously in his seat. The ethical implications of interfering in an alien conflict are significant. We would be taking sides in a war we do not fully understand. The ethical implications of letting space bugs eat the galaxy, Morrison replied coldly, seem pretty clear to me. These Vorthak things do not negotiate or compromise. They consume everything in their path. If we let them win, Earth becomes their next target eventually. President Torres studied the tactical displays showing the alien fleet positions. How fast can we deploy a response force? The first expeditionary fleet can be ready in 72 hours, Morrison answered immediately. 50 ships, including our 2 newest Phoenix-class dreadnoughts. We will also bring along some of our experimental weapons systems, just in case we need to make a strong first impression. The Phoenix-class dreadnoughts were humanity's answer to the question of what would happen if you took a city-sized platform and covered it with every weapon system human imagination could devise. Each ship carried enough firepower to reduce a planet to rubble, and they were just the largest ships in the human arsenal. What about the political situation? Asked Secretary of Defense Patricia Wells. If we intervene successfully, how do we handle the diplomatic aftermath? Morrison exchanged glances with Colonel Murphy. They had discussed this possibility many times during their planning sessions. Madam President, I recommend we make it clear that Earth is not interested in joining their coalition as a junior partner. We help them because it serves our interests, not because we want their approval. President Torres considered this for a long moment. The room waited in silence as she weighed the decision that would determine humanity's place in galactic politics. Finally, she nodded. Admiral Morrison, you have authorization to deploy the first expeditionary fleet. Your mission is to assess the Vorthak threat and, if possible, eliminate it. You have full discretionary authority regarding tactics and weapons deployment. As the meeting broke up, Colonel Murphy approached Morrison privately. Jake, these aliens have no idea what they just asked for, do they? Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the planned deployment routes to the Kathvar system. Human ships would arrive there in less than a week, bringing with them weapons and tactics that the galaxy had never seen before. The Galactic Defense Coalition fought wars like gentlemen, following rules about acceptable targets and proportional responses. Humanity had learned to fight wars like they were fighting for survival. Because they usually were. Ryan, we are about to introduce the galaxy to human military doctrine. These aliens think war is about honor and following proper procedures. We are going to show them that war is about making the other side stop fighting by any means necessary. He turned away from the display and headed for the door. There was a lot of work to do before the fleet launched. Ships needed final weapons checks, crews needed briefings on alien biology, and the special weapon systems needed to be loaded and prepared for combat. Colonel, make sure all ships are equipped with full nuclear arsenals, and have the engineering teams load those new kinetic bombardment systems we tested last month. The ones that can punch holes through asteroids? Those are the ones. If these Vorthak creatures want to play extinction-level games, we will show them how humans play. 3 days later, Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Around him, his bridge crew ran through final systems checks with the calm efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire careers. The ship hummed with barely contained power as its fusion reactors fed energy to weapon systems that had never been tested in real combat. Lieutenant Commander Beth Williams looked up from her sensor station. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, Admiral. Estimated arrival at the Kathvar system is 6 hours, 14 minutes. Morrison nodded and opened a fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. In a few hours, we will be arriving at an alien battlefield to fight enemies we have never seen before. The Coalition forces have been fighting these creatures for 3 years and losing. They think these Vorthak are unbeatable. He paused, looking out at the formation of human warships ready to jump into the unknown. They are wrong. Humans do not lose wars because we cannot afford to lose wars. We will show the galaxy that when Earth sends help, Earth sends the kind of help that solves problems permanently. Jump in 3 minutes. Good hunting. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of a desperate alien admiral and the fury of a species that had never learned how to surrender. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations for a war that might determine the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. The monsters were coming, and they were ready to show the universe what monsters could do. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kathvar system, like death itself arriving for an appointment. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching his tactical display fill with enemy contacts. 37 Vorthak bioships hung in orbit around the dying planet, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly green light. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Beth Williams from her sensor station. "Sir, I'm reading massive life signs from the planet's surface. The Vorthak have built some kind of processing facilities down there. They are converting the colonists into raw materials." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. 3 million innocent people reduced to food for these space monsters. He had seen the intelligence reports about Vorthak feeding habits, but seeing the actual evidence made it real in a way that no briefing ever could. "Communications. Open a channel to the Coalition flagship," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Zixthala on the bridge of her damaged ship. The alien looked surprised to see him, her crystal features reflecting the red emergency lights around her. Behind her, Morrison could see crew members with bandages and signs of recent combat. "Admiral Morrison," she said, her translated voice filled with disbelief. "You actually came. How many ships did you bring?" 50 combat vessels, Admiral. We are ready to engage the enemy immediately." A long pause filled the channel. 50 ships? Admiral, we started this battle with 300 vessels in our defense fleet. The Vorthak destroyed or disabled all but my flagship and 12 escorts. Their adaptive shielding makes energy weapons useless after the first few hits, and their hull regeneration systems can repair damage faster than we can inflict it. Morrison nodded calmly. "Understood. We will handle it from here." He cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer, Commander Steve Parker. "Parker, I want a full spread of Mark 7 nuclear torpedoes targeted at the largest bioship. Let us see how these creatures handle some Earth hospitality." "Sir, our xenobiology team thinks these organisms might actually feed on nuclear radiation," Parker warned. "Then we will learn something new today. Fire when ready." The Retribution launched 12 nuclear warheads at the lead Vorthak vessel. The bioship's organic point defense systems came alive, shooting down most of the incoming missiles with streams of acidic plasma. But 3 warheads got through, detonating against the creature's hull in brilliant flashes of nuclear fire. Instead of damage, the ship's bioluminescent patterns grew brighter. Its organic armor seemed to thicken and strengthen, feeding on the radiation like a plant feeds on sunlight. "Well, that is interesting," Morrison observed with scientific detachment. "They do absorb nuclear energy." Parker switched to kinetic bombardment systems. "I want to see how they handle a 10-ton tungsten rod moving at 60% of light speed." "Kinetic rounds away, sir." The relativistic projectile struck the bioship's hull and punched completely through it like a bullet through wet paper. The massive round continued through 2 more vessels before its energy finally dissipated in empty space. The lead bioship began venting atmosphere and organic fluids, its bioluminescence flickering like a dying light bulb. "Now that got their attention," Morrison said with grim satisfaction. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. New engagement rules are in effect. These creatures adapt to energy weapons, so we use kinetic kill vehicles, mass drivers, and good old-fashioned high explosives. Target their command nodes first, then work through their formation systematically." The human fleet spread out into a 3-dimensional attack formation that would have been impossible for most species to coordinate without advanced artificial intelligence. But humans had been fighting naval battles in 3 dimensions for centuries, ever since they first took to the seas on their home world. Their tactics adapted quickly to the realities of space combat. The UES Thunderbolt, a heavy cruiser under Captain Dan Rodriguez, demonstrated humanity's approach to space warfare by launching what its crew called crowd pleasers. These were massive kinetic impactors wrapped around conventional explosive warheads, designed to punch through armor before detonating inside the target. The Vorthak bioships tried to intercept the incoming projectiles with their organic point defense systems, but the human weapons were too fast and too numerous. When the warheads detonated, they did not just damage the bioships. They filled the surrounding space with clouds of high-velocity shrapnel that tore through organic hulls like cosmic buckshot. "Admiral," reported Commander Williams, excitement creeping into her professional voice, "the Vorthak formation is breaking apart. They are trying to retreat." Morrison opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships pursue and destroy. We do not let any of them escape to report our tactics back to their hive mind. This engagement ends when every hostile contact is eliminated." What followed was less a battle than a systematic demonstration of human military efficiency. The Vorthak bioships had evolved to fight enemies who used energy weapons and followed galactic conventions about proportional response. They had no experience with opponents who treated every engagement as a fight to the death. The human ships moved through the enemy formation like wolves among sheep. Their weapon systems had been designed by engineers who assumed they would always be outnumbered and outgunned. Every shot was meant to kill. Every tactic was designed to end fights quickly and decisively, Captain. Rodriguez's ship demonstrated another human innovation when it deployed a spread of what the crew called sticky bombs. These were small devices that attached themselves to enemy hulls and detonated in sequence, creating cascading failures throughout the bioship's organic systems. The UES Wolverine, a fast attack cruiser, showed off humanity's talent for improvised weapons by firing a stream of industrial mining charges into a cluster of Vorthak vessels. The explosion sent chunks of asteroid-grade mining equipment through the bioships at high velocity, causing damage that their regeneration systems could not repair fast enough. As the battle continued, the human fleet displayed a level of tactical coordination that impressed even their own officers. Ships covered each other's attack runs, shared targeting data in real time, and adapted their tactics based on observed enemy responses. It was the kind of seamless military operation that could only come from a species that had been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years. Admiral Zix's Thala watched the engagement from her damaged flagship, unable to believe what she was seeing. The humans were not just winning. They were dominating an enemy that had defeated every coalition fleet sent against it. Their weapons cut through Vorthak defenses like they were made of paper, and their tactics seemed designed specifically to counter every advantage the bioships possessed. "How are they doing this?" she asked her tactical officer. "I do not know, Admiral. Their weapons appear primitive by our standards, but their tactical doctrine is unlike anything in our military databases. They fight like they expect to be outnumbered and outgunned in every engagement." The engagement lasted exactly 37 minutes from first contact to final enemy destruction. When it was over, not a single Vorthak bioship remained intact. The space around Kathvar was filled with debris and the cooling remains of organic vessels. That had seemed invincible just an hour before. Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to the Coalition flagship. Admiral Zixathala, this is Admiral Morrison. The immediate threat has been eliminated. We are prepared to assist with rescue operations on the planet's surface. The alien admiral's image appeared on his screen, her crystal features reflecting emotions that Morrison could not begin to interpret. Admiral Morrison, how did you accomplish this? We have been fighting these creatures for 3 years without a single decisive victory. Morrison considered his answer carefully. Admiral, we have been preparing to fight something like the Vorthak our entire history. The galaxy might have sent silence when you called for help, but Earth sends monsters when monsters are what the situation requires. He paused, looking at the tactical display that showed his fleet in perfect formation among the wreckage of their enemies. The difference is simple. Your people fight wars like gentlemen. We fight wars like we are fighting for our lives because usually we are. The news of humanity's victory at Kathvar spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In the great halls of the Galactic Defense Coalition headquarters, Admiral Zixathala stood before an assembly of military leaders from 47 different worlds, playing combat recordings that most of them could barely believe. The humans destroyed 37 Vorthak bioships without losing a single vessel, she reported, her crystal voice echoing through the chamber. Their weapons technology appears primitive by our standards, but their tactical methods are completely different from anything we have seen before. High Counselor Morthak of the Centaurian Republic leaned forward in his floating chair, his 4 eyes focusing on the holographic display. This species was rejected for coalition membership only 5 years ago. The evaluation committee called them too aggressive and violent for civilized society. Perhaps, Zixathala said quietly, we should have paid more attention to those aggressive tendencies when the Vorthak started eating our worlds. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 3 years, the greatest military minds in the galaxy had thrown ships and lives against the Vorthak swarm, with nothing to show for it but growing casualty lists. Now a species they had dismissed as primitive barbarians had accomplished what their combined fleets could not. Meanwhile, in the cold depths of space beyond the galactic rim, something ancient and terrible was having thoughts that had never troubled it before. The Vorthak primary hive mind stretched across light years of empty space, its consciousness distributed among trillions of individual organisms. For thousands of years it had spread through the universe like a slow plague, consuming everything it encountered. The destruction of the Kathvar swarm represented more than just a tactical defeat. The bioships had been destroyed too quickly to transmit detailed information about human weapons and tactics. For the first time in its existence, the hive mind faced an enemy it did not understand. This was a new experience, and the hive mind did not like new experiences. Across 17 different star systems, Vorthak advanced swarms received new orders. The expansion was to halt immediately. All forward elements were to consolidate their positions and prepare defensive formations. The time for easy conquest was over. Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison was briefing President Torres on the strategic situation in the Pentagon's secure conference room. Wall-mounted displays showed the current positions of Vorthak forces throughout the outer rim, with red markers indicating systems already consumed by the swarm. The good news is that our weapons are effective against Vorthak bioships, Morrison reported. The bad news is that we have only engaged their scouting forces. Intelligence estimates suggest the main hive contains millions of vessels and billions of individual organisms. Dr. Brooks presented his analysis of recovered Vorthak specimens to the assembled military leadership. These creatures are remarkable biological machines. Every individual shares information with the collective consciousness, which means they learn and adapt from every encounter. The fact that we destroyed their ships quickly enough to prevent data transmission bought us time, but not very much time. General Carter studied the galactic map, noting the 17 red zones where Vorthak forces had established themselves. Even if we can match them ship for ship, the numbers do not look good. They have had 3 years to build up their forces while the galaxy did nothing. President Torres looked tired. The weight of representing humanity's interests in a galaxy that had initially rejected them was beginning to show. Admiral Morrison, what do you need to continue operations? Time, Madam President. Time to build more ships, train more crews, and develop new weapon systems. The Vorthak will be back, and when they return, they will be prepared for kinetic bombardment and high explosive warheads. Colonel Murphy approached the strategic display, his expression thoughtful. What if we do not wait for them to come back? What if we take the fight to them before they have time to adapt? The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Dr. Brooks was the first to speak, his voice filled with concern. Colonel, you are talking about launching an aggressive campaign against an enemy of unknown size and capability, operating in territory we have never explored. I am talking about doing what humans do best, Murphy replied calmly, taking a bad situation and making it somebody else's problem. Morrison studied the tactical displays showing estimated Vorthak positions beyond the galactic rim. Earth's industrial capacity had been expanding exponentially since first contact protocols were established. Automated manufacturing systems in the asteroid belt could produce warships faster than any biological species could crew them. More importantly, human military doctrine was specifically designed for rapid deployment and overwhelming force projection. Madam President, Morrison said slowly, Colonel Murphy has a valid point. Our entire military philosophy is built around striking first and striking hard. If we give the Vorthak time to develop countermeasures for our weapons, we lose our primary tactical advantage. What exactly are you proposing? A preemptive strike against their forward staging areas. We locate their main bases and destroy them before they can mount a coordinated counterattack. We use humanity's greatest strategic asset, which is? Morrison's smile was as cold as the vacuum of space. We are the only species in the galaxy that considers total warfare an acceptable option. President Torres considered the proposal carefully. The political implications were staggering. Launching an unprovoked attack beyond the galactic rim would make Earth appear to be exactly the kind of aggressive, militaristic species that the Coalition had feared. On the other hand, waiting for the Vorthak to adapt and counterattack would likely result in the extinction of human civilization, along with everyone else. How long would you need to prepare? 6 months to assemble the fleet and gather intelligence on Vorthak positions. We would need to build some specialized weapon systems for extended operations beyond the rim. General Carter looked up from her tactical analysis. What kind of specialized systems? Morrison exchanged glances with Colonel Murphy. They had discussed this possibility during their planning sessions, though neither had expected to implement it so soon. Planet killers, Madam President. If we are going to fight the Vorthak on their home territory, we need weapons that can sterilize entire star systems. These creatures reproduce by converting organic matter, so the only way to ensure they cannot return is to eliminate all organic matter in their operational areas. Dr. Brooks looked horrified. Admiral, you are talking about weapons of mass destruction on a scale that violates every treaty the galaxy has ever signed. Dr. Brooks, we never signed those treaties, Morrison pointed out. Earth is not a member of the Galactic Defense Coalition, remember? We are under no obligation to follow their rules about proportional response and acceptable targets. President Torres walked to the window overlooking the Pentagon courtyard, where she could see construction crews working on the new Xenowarfare Command Center. In just 5 years, humanity had gone from a single-world species to a major military power. The question now was whether they would use that power defensively or take the initiative. Admiral Morrison, you have authorization to begin planning for Operation Deep Strike. Assemble the largest fleet in human history and prepare it for extended combat operations beyond the galactic rim. Your mission parameters are simple. Locate and destroy every Vorthak installation you can find. She turned back to face the room, her expression grim but determined. Gentlemen, the galaxy had its chance to handle this threat through diplomacy and collective action. They chose to send thoughts and prayers instead of ships and soldiers. Now we will show them what happens when Earth decides to solve a problem. As the meeting dispersed, Morrison began mentally calculating the resources needed for humanity's first major offensive operation. It would require every ship they could build, every weapon they could devise, and every tactical innovation their military minds could produce. The Vorthak swarm had made a critical error when they started their expansion toward the galactic core. They had awakened something that the universe had never seen before. A species that treated extinction-level warfare as standard operating procedure. The monsters were about to show the galaxy what real monsters could accomplish when they stopped playing defense. 6 months after the Battle of Kathvar, the largest military fleet in human history gathered at the edge of known space. 300 warships floated in perfect formation, ranging from fast attack vessels to the massive new Apocalypse-class super dreadnoughts that were larger than most space stations. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis, watching his fleet prepare for humanity's first offensive war beyond the galactic rim. Around him, his bridge crew represented the best of human military tradition. Veterans of the Mars colonial wars worked alongside graduates of the new Xenowarfare Academy. They had trained for this moment their entire careers, preparing to fight enemies they had never seen in places they had never been. "Sir," reported Commander Williams, now promoted to Chief Tactical Officer, "all fleet elements report ready for hyperspace jump. Our reconnaissance drones have identified 17 major Vorthak staging systems beyond the rim." "And the special weapons?" Captain Rodriguez, commanding the super dreadnought UES Apocalypse, confirmed readiness over the communication system. "All Omega-class devices are loaded and armed, Admiral. Engineering reports that the stellar manipulation systems are functioning within acceptable parameters." Morrison nodded grimly. The Omega devices were humanity's solution to the Vorthak adaptation problem. If the enemy could adapt to conventional weapons, then humans would use weapons that left nothing to adapt to. Planet killers, star destroyers, and devices that could sterilize entire solar systems. "Admiral," came a transmission from Admiral Zixthala, commanding a small coalition observer fleet. "I must protest these extreme measures once again. The weapons you are planning to deploy exceed anything in the Galactic Conventions on Warfare." Morrison cut her off before she could continue. "Admiral, your people have been fighting this war with conventional methods for 3 years. You lost 17 systems and billions of lives because you tried to be civilized with creatures that eat civilizations. We are going to end this the human way." The human fleet jumped into hyperspace, emerging in the first target system, like the hand of death itself reaching across the void. The Vorthak presence was massive beyond anything they had encountered before. Hundreds of bioships floated around organic space stations the size of small moons. Conversion facilities on the planets below processed the remains of entire stellar civilizations, turning them into raw materials for the swarm's endless expansion. "All ships," Morrison broadcast across the fleet communication network, "you know the mission parameters. No survivors, no witnesses, no mercy. These creatures wanted to play extinction games with the galaxy. Time to show them how humans play extinction games." What followed was not warfare in any sense that civilized species would recognize. The human fleet deployed weapons that had existed only in theoretical papers until 6 months ago. Gravitational torpedoes collapsed bioships into tiny black holes. Quantum destabilizers unraveled organic matter at the molecular level. Antimatter charges left nothing but empty space where Vorthak installations had been moments before. The U.S. Apocalypse demonstrated humanity's ultimate answer to the Vorthak problem by firing a stellar manipulation device into the system's primary star. The weapon penetrated the star's core and began destabilizing the nuclear fusion reactions that kept it burning. Within hours, the star began to dim as exotic matter disrupted its energy production. Captain Rodriguez reported with clinical detachment over the fleet communication system. "Stellar destabilization proceeding according to projections. System-wide sterilization will be complete in approximately 14 hours. All organic matter within 3 astronomical units will be eliminated." The human fleet moved to the next system, and the next, and the next. Each engagement became more efficient as humanity's war machine adapted and improved. The Vorthak bioships, evolved over millions of years for conversion and assimilation, had no defense against enemies who preferred complete annihilation to conquest. In the 7th system, the humans encountered something new. A Vorthak superorganism the size of a small planet, its surface covered with millions of smaller creatures working to process captured starships. Commander Williams identified it as some kind of mobile hive facility, capable of producing new bioships at an incredible rate. "That thing is basically a factory that makes more enemies," observed Colonel Murphy over the tactical network. "I vote we make it stop being a thing," Morrison agreed. "All ships focus fire on the superorganism. Use everything we have." The concentrated firepower of 300 human warships struck the creature simultaneously. Nuclear warheads, kinetic impactors, antimatter bombs, and exotic energy weapons hit the massive organism from every direction. For a moment, it seemed to absorb the damage, its surface rippling and healing like living tissue. Then the Omega devices activated. The superorganism simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a mountain of flesh and metal processing the remains of dead civilizations. The next moment there was nothing but empty space and a slowly expanding cloud of elementary particles. "Target eliminated," reported the weapons officer, with the same tone he might use to announce lunch was ready. By the end of the campaign, 17 Vorthak staging systems had been reduced to debris fields and dying stars. The hive mind's expansion into the galaxy came to an abrupt and permanent halt as its forward elements were systematically exterminated. For the first time in its million-year history, the Vorthak swarm retreated. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Admiral Morrison received a priority transmission from Earth. President Torres appeared on the holographic display, flanked by representatives from the Joint Chiefs and 47 coalition member worlds. "Admiral Morrison," the president said, "I have been authorized by the Galactic Defense Coalition to extend an offer of immediate full membership to humanity. With complete strategic partnership rights, it seems our methods, while extreme, have proven highly effective." Morrison considered the irony of the situation. 3 years ago, humanity had been deemed too primitive and aggressive for galactic society. Now that same aggression had saved galactic society from extinction. "Madam President, with all due respect, I think we will decline the membership offer." The silence on the communication channel was complete. Finally, High Counselor Morthak found his voice. "Admiral Morrison, surely you cannot be serious. After all you have accomplished, after saving countless billions of lives." Morrison looked out at the debris field that had once been a Vorthak hive cluster. 17 star systems had been sterilized to prevent the swarm from returning. It was the most thorough military victory in galactic history, achieved through methods that would give coalition diplomats nightmares for generations. "Counselor, 3 years ago you called for help and the galaxy sent silence. When silence failed, Earth sent monsters. Now that the monsters have done their job, you want to pretend we are all civilized together." He paused, letting his words sink in across the communication channel. "Here is the problem with that plan. Monsters do not just disappear when the immediate crisis is over. We are still here and we are still monsters. The only difference is that now the galaxy knows what we are capable of when we decide something needs to stop existing." Morrison gestured toward the tactical display showing the sterilized Vorthak systems. "Keep your coalition, Counselor. Earth will remain independent. But remember this day, because when the next existential threat appears in your galaxy, and it will appear eventually, you will know exactly who to call." He closed the communication channel and turned to his fleet commanders. "All ships prepare for return journey to Earth. Mission accomplished." The human fleet began its journey home, leaving behind 17 dead star systems as a monument to a simple truth. Sometimes when civilization cries for help, the only answer is monsters, and humanity had proven to be very effective monsters when the situation required it. In the years that followed, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. The Vorthak swarm retreated beyond the cosmic void, their expansion permanently halted by humanity's demonstration of absolute warfare. The Galactic Defense Coalition rebuilt their fleets and implemented new defensive strategies based on human tactical innovations. Earth remained independent, its growing fleet serving as an unofficial guarantor of galactic security. When pirates threatened trade routes, human patrol ships appeared to restore order with overwhelming force. When hostile species probed coalition borders, they found human warning beacons marking the boundaries of civilized space. The galaxy learned to live with the knowledge that somewhere in the Sol system, a species of monsters stood ready to defend civilization by any means necessary. It was not a comfortable peace, but it was peace. And in the depths of space, other ancient threats sensed the new balance of power and decided to remain hidden for a while longer. The monsters of Earth were watching, and they had proven what happened to things that threatened their galaxy.